so we will call the committee of the whole meeting to order June 21st, 2022. Mr. Don Ryan is on the agenda.
The pledge and stuff too, or not?
We don't for
Not
that.
usually.
For the call for ever since COVID hit, the few I do come to, I've been sitting at my desk, so. I was gonna have Krista Jones present with me from Community Corrections, if that's all right?
Sure.
Come on up, Krista.
Absolutely. Okay.
So what I wanted to start with today, and I want to show you that this is my first page on my outline. It says, "Not here today asking for anything." Just want to start a conversation.
Are we leaving now?
Okay, so you can continue then.
And I did not realize that was going to be the whole show today. I thought it was just going to be a short thing crammed in between a couple other presentations because your committee of the wholes are so full.
Oh,
So
you're the show today.
We have a
Yeah.
3-minute time limit, Don.
3-minute time limit. I can talk fast, but my average closing argument's an hour long. So I just wanted to get an opportunity to, am I too loud if I lean forward? Sit down and start a conversation with the board about some office needs that we have, and realistically, it kind of pigeon-toes into space needs. And again, I'm not here to ask for anything, but I just kind of wanted to run through a little information in my office. I have a little information on corrections. I asked Krista to join me because even though I have some of the general information, if you had a specific question about community corrections, she's the person to ask, not really me. As far as the operations and stuff go, she's the head honcho down there. So I want to start out with our actual gross case numbers aren't necessarily rising. Now, in any one year, like right now we have a 200% increase in homicides because we had 0, now we have 2. So I mean, you can play statistics however you want to. If we never have another homicide the rest of my career, I'll be happy. But I've said that before as well. So our overall gross case numbers aren't necessarily rising, but the sophistication of the criminal conduct is. And in the sophistications of the investigations that go along with that are becoming more demanding in our time. So like when I first started, we would go down to Souther's studio with a roll of film, and we'd have it developed, and we'd get 2 sets of prints and 2 sets of negatives, and I'd hand one off to the defense attorney, and we're done. Now, it's all digital. And it took us over a year in different court proceedings to get digital photography accepted as evidence, right? So now not only do we have digital photography and digital video, we have squad cams, we have body cams, we have security videos from all of the various places we can find along a route that's involved in a criminal conduct. And with all of that increased in sophistication, it takes more time for my non-attorneys and my attorneys and myself to process that information, decide what we want to do, and then we have to back up. So for instance, with the Mosier homicide, I only wanted to use, and I only want to use certain parts of different videos. We don't have the technology to edit that, so then we go back to law enforcement, and then I start at, minute 1.1 and go to minute 3, just making that up. And so then they send me that redacted film, and then we redisclose it to the defense and stuff. So it's not that our numbers necessarily are increasing dramatically. They are up in some, and they'll be down, and that will fluctuate every year. It's the demand or the sophistication of what we have to do increases. And as it takes more time to get stuff done, and we're not seeing a reduction in our numbers, then there's a give and take in there someplace. More defendants seem to want to go to trial or at least go through contested omnibus hearings than ever before, and so that means that we're prepping witnesses, we're prepping exhibits, we're going into court, and we're trying stuff. And as the courts are coming out of COVID, all of those kinds of hearings are in person. So the number of in-person hearings in court are actually increasing, and we're going to continue to see that go up, even with the most recent projections out of the courts on how they're going to roll some of the COVID stuff back. We also are going to see a number of proceedings, even in criminal court, stay as a virtual appearance. So Rule 5 is basically, on a felony, is the defendant's first time in front of a judge if they weren't arrested. And Rule 5, basically, you show up You determine if the defendant has received a copy of the complaint. Do they understand the words on the paper? Not do they agree or disagree? Do they just understand the words, the nature of the allegation and the charges? And can they afford a lawyer, or do they want to get a public defender? Then that's going to stay virtual. It's kind of a high judge by judge thing. The next hearing is Rule 8, where you kind of re-review what the charges are, and you just determine whether Crow Wing County is the correct county of venue. So it has to happen here, right? It can't happen down in Olmsted County and then be prosecuted here without going through a series of different things. That Rule 5 and Rule 8 sometimes are combined, sometimes aren't, but those kinds of hearings are going to stay virtual, in my opinion. So that takes some of the burden of having people on premises to deal with court proceedings. That lightens that a little bit, but it's not a full-time job to just sit home and do virtual Rule 8s and Rule 5s. And at different times of the week, we have to be in court to do different kinds of things in different kinds of cases. So COVID, the backlog, we're addressing it, but it's still there. But it's going to forever have changed what we do in the judiciary and probably everywhere. I mean, there was never a virtual appearance in a court before COVID hit. Never. Well, I shouldn't say never. Maybe in civil court once in a while, but very rarely. So when we built and moved into the Judicial Center, I didn't go back and actually try to count everything up. I just went from memory. We had 6 attorneys, not including myself, and we had 9 attorney staff. Today, I have 12 full-time lawyers, and I have 14 non-attorney staff, and I have 2 contracted attorneys, and actually you could say 3 if we count Paul Reavers, who has a contract with Highway to do some of them, and water rights, land use kind of stuff. That's independent of our office. And one of the contracted attorneys is Scott Anderson in that land use area, and without him we wouldn't be keeping up with that even as stuff is rolling out. The other one is actually the retired chief deputy from Sherburne County, Sam Wertheimer. He and his significant other, they moved up to the Crosby area, and he got bored after he retired, came in and wanted to do something. So I have him on a contract on an hourly rate. Tim and I had discussed it. And he's doing he's reviewing almost all of the charges that come in, the non-in-custodies and some of the in-custodies. And we're able to keep up with our criminal charging because he's focused on that. He actually ghost wrote a brief for me on an appeal. He's helping us cover arraignments for the people who are in custody when they come in. Without that, we would just be falling further and further and further behind. But in order to have a workspace for Sam to use, we put 2 workstations in our conference room in my office, and so we don't have a conference room anymore until I commandeered the one at the end of the 3rd hall from the courts. And so we changed the locks on it, so we're the only one with a key. And so that's what we're using for our conference room right now. When we moved into the Judicial Center, if you would have told me I would outgrow that space, I would have physically laughed. I mean, seriously, we had open offices, we had open workstations. We actually have added 3 more workstations into the space that we had when we first moved in, but it was designed to do that. We've taken over what was the law library, which is right next to our office, and put 3 new offices in there. It was designed for that purpose. We moved the law library down to 2nd floor, which would be the next place I might have to go take over if someday we would decide not to have a law library, but right now we do have one, and that's up to you, the board, if you want one, but you're not legally required to have one. I don't know how usable that space would be for additional office space, and if it would be worth the money to gut that, if you will, and put office spaces in there, maybe workstations. But it's something that we're looking at, just what are the issues, what to try to do, what do we brainstorm to try to use the footprint that we have within our buildings. In one of the areas that we're seeing the demand increase more and more in the civil areas, I just met with Community Services, and they want more attorney time and legal assistant time and child support, which is actually something we can bill for. And the only reason we would bill Community Services to do child support, which we do now, is because they can get 60 or 66, whatever it is, more than 50% of what we bill them back from the federal government in 4D funding. And there's a cap that they need to, that they cap out on that, and every year they have to renew that funding. So if there's an outside source, like, again, like with highway, if it's a federally funded highway project, whatever we do for legal services for that, we bill them because the federal government will reimburse them. Otherwise, it doesn't make any sense for me to bill probation to do something because it's all levy dollars. So whether it comes out of my budget or someone else's budget, it's all Crow Wing County taxpayer levy funded dollars, and so I don't see any need to bill other than when we can bring in outside sources, just like various departments have grants and stuff that they bring in. And one of my 14 non-attorneys is Julie Charpentier, who is our victim services coordinator, and that's on a federal grant on a 70-30 match, I believe. But for that grant, and that's the deal I had, a different county board configuration, but when we put that position, the agreement with the board was, yes, you can have it as long as that federal money continues to flow. If it doesn't flow, then I have to have another conversation with you, the board, but that's still coming in, so it's not something that's before you today. I'm just trying to give you an understanding of trying to do everything we can to keep the costs down and address what we need to do. And oddly enough, I don't even think Tim realized it, but he gave me some good ammunition for today, too. Yesterday at senior management.
Thanks.
Even a broken clock is right twice a day.
We were talking about, in this labor market, the value of interns and how if we can get someone in, say for a summer internship, and we see some talent that we think we can nurture to become a county employee, and then that's a good thing. And then maybe it's not a good mix, so then we know that as well. I have no space for an intern, but I actually have a lawyer right now, Kelsey Hops, who actually, many of you know Glenn Gustafson, it's his granddaughter, who in college and then in law school came back every summer, primarily so she could stay with Cramp at the cabin, I think, but worked with us. And then she went off to law school, and she kept coming back in the summers. And by the time she was a second, third year law student, we actually had her doing substantive work for us in, say, the forfeiture field or things, because we had trained her in. Then she graduated from law school and got a judicial clerkship with Judge DeMay in Crow Wing County. That's where I hired her from. We basically nurtured and created one of our trial lawyers, and right now she's on criminal team 4, which does felony sexual assault and assault on those kinds of cases, and she's a crackerjack lawyer. And so we helped her become that kind of an attorney. I don't have that opportunity right now because I don't have any space to put anybody. I don't even have a counter to put a bench next to put someone there. And again, I'm not asking anything, I'm just telling you where we're at, right? In addition to that, and I promise you, Krista, I'm getting to your stuff in a minute. The judiciary now has created a new scheduling system in Crow Wing County, just for Crow Wing County. And I'm not picking on them, but the increasing demands of that system will simultaneously be in 2 or 3 courtrooms, just in adult felony criminal stuff. And sometimes that means we're in trial in one courtroom and we're in 2 other courtrooms, possibly for a contested omnibus or an uncontested omnibus or some other trial. So that means we have to spread out. And the demands of the judiciary are not going down. They're going up statewide when I talk to other county attorneys. So we're supposed to be ready for everything on every trial calendar. And if I have a lawyer that has 10 cases on a trial calendar, we can't have 10 cases ready. And so we're looking and are going to have to explore how we might even have to reduce some of our specialization so that we can try to have multiple lawyers ready in every courtroom. As much as I'm fighting that right now, that's one of the things we're looking at. We've seen more Rule 20s, mental competency exams than we've ever seen before. Mental health's a huge issue. And there's more debate than I remember in a while in regards to mental health issues versus chemical dependencies and where's that overlap. And so we have gap cases, overlap cases. Even our County Attorney Association has introduced legislation to try to address some of these issues at that level. And when you hear E something, E does not mean easier for the Crow Wing County Attorney's Office. E might mean easier for the judiciary, like e-charging, e-filing. Maybe not you, Commissioner Brecken or Commissioner Barrows, but the other 3 of you have heard me piss and moan about e-filing and e-charging when that first came out, how that increased our work. And then we have to go in, file something, come back out, go back in, file it again, where we used to be able to just drop it off at the counter. It's great for the courts, but it's not great for our office. You have the same experience because you can only do one thing per one piece of paper, so to speak, or one document. And realistically, expectations of victims have increased too, but that's something that we can address, but just kind of in a holistic approach. TV shows, like a lot of the ones you see, I don't even watch litter shows anymore, because if I tried half of that, I'd probably get kicked out of court. But anyway, now I'm shifting to corrections. Corrections, if I remember correctly, and Krista helped me with these, they currently have 29 staff.
28.
What?
28.
28, okay, I wrote it down wrong, sorry. They have some agents on the third floor in what was supposed to be a hearing room for the judiciary, and eventually they're gonna want that back. But we put temporary offices in there because they needed a place to put workstations. I think you have 5 up there?
Yep.
Then they have 15 or 16 agents on the second floor, I think 2 case aides, 3 support staff, and then you have the 3 supervisors. And 2 of those, Kay and Preston, rotate between the community services building and the judicial center, because they only have 2 offices in the judicial center. So I don't know if they swap days or whatever it is, but they're rotating back and forth between the 2 buildings.
We have 2 agents in community services as well. We moved our specialty courts over there because we were running out of room, so we moved our 2, our drug court agent, our DWI court agent are over on second floor in community services right now. So currently we're in 4 different locations.
When we built these buildings and moved into them, we were still in Central Minnesota Community Corrections. You'll remember that, I think, Commissioner Coyne and Commissioner Franzine. And they had, I'm estimating 15 to 16 agents, including Tom Rosenthal, the supervisor, when they moved in. Were you here too, Doug? I'm sorry, I apologize.
No, it's,
And so then then we got out of Central Minnesota Community Corrections, and we created our own community corrections. What you may or may not remember is when we built we were looking at building what was then Social Services Building and the Judicial Center, now the Community Services Building. We had public health, we had social services, they were in the thing of blending, but community corrections and community services were separate entities. And then we merged it all into one in about that same time frame. And I think I can remember when they were talking about CMCC was talking about needing additional space, and I think I might have upset you when I did this, Commissioner Corning, but when they said we're looking at maybe vacating and going across the street, I quick stood up and said I get dibs on that space, if you remember that.
Yeah,
I remember.
that did set me off.
Anyway.
I remember community corrections very well when I look at this gavel, because I hit it so hard down here, the wood went flying off of here. If you remember, the room was full and the deputies were back there with their hand on their gun. I think they were mad at one of the commissioners that's no longer here. But this flew off of there when I was hammering it down.
But about half, when we were in the discussion, and for the county board at the time, Gary Walters was the board representative on that planning effort. And so I remember about half, but it really doesn't matter. Some of the plans for what the floor footprints would look like had community corrections across the street. So this isn't a new concept if we would start to explore moving them across the street. And ultimately the decision was to put them on second floor. And when we designed those buildings, particularly the Judicial Center, it's built as such that that parking lot to the west can become office space. And then like where I'm at, where corrections are at, those are designed, laid out so they could become courtrooms. Because at the time we were looking at having 10 judges in Crow Wing County, but then that plan, when the economy took a downturn, that disappeared. It's also designed, if you stand on the second floor and look across the street, I think it's about a 10% grade down toward community services that's designed so that you can put a skyway there. And we went with the skyway option because we looked at what would it cost to tunnel underneath if we wanted to do a tunnel. And we would have to relocate all of the utilities under Laurel Street, and that was way too expensive. So when we designed it that should a future board decide to want to connect those buildings, that we would go the Skyway route. There's no plan to do that now, but I'm just sharing with you that when we built the buildings, we looked at what would future use be, and if we did put more courtrooms into the Judicial Center, we have the elevator going from the first floor all the way to the third with holding cells for during the day for those that are in custody. There's another elevator shaft already whatever you call it, fab, so that all you gotta do is punch some holes in the predetermined portions of the floor. And you can put that in there, and then that long corridor that basically is storage, that becomes secured hallway to be able to get to that second elevator shaft. And so there's a lot of thought that went into some of those things, just sharing.
But I want to caution you, because you always like to caution us.
That's
So
fine.
I'm cautioning you that I don't want Chelsea to report that, oh my God, we're going to be building on. We are not building on. At least my vote is not building on, because I know we have enough space on this campus. And if that means moving you guys across the street. So I don't want the story to, with this school referendum and, the way people feel after last week, we know that there's a lot of angry people about taxes, about their valuations, about the school referendum. We're not building any buildings.
Chelsea, I'm specifically looking at you and telling you I'm not asking to build new buildings. I'm not highway, and that's not anything we're actually currently discussing other than when you look at the big
Because it
picture,
almost
look at
sounded
everything.
like you were going that direction, so I just want to
A
make
few
that
little
clear.
nuggets along the way.
I'm
I
not
thought,
here
oh,
pushing
Lord, here we
any
come.
agenda. I'm just doing exactly what I said, and go right back to my first, that's not the first page. Right back to the first page. And by the way, this is how I do my trial outlines. They're all color-coded like Christmas trees, so.
And I have no, if Community Corrections needs to move across the street over there, I have no problem. I don't know that like a $2 million, I don't know how much it would be, build out or a remodel. I guess I'm really gonna have to see some detail on that. I mean, I understand that some of this stuff is a privacy thing, but I think the way the economy is now, and I got a bad feeling about the way things are going. I don't think we want to start spending a whole bunch of money and getting too crazy right now on remodels or whatever, but I don't think you guys have a problem moving across the street if that need be. I mean, if it is what it is.
Not at all. And I think there's a lot of benefits with us being housed over there and being near the social workers and
Right,
financial
yeah.
workers, and yeah, absolutely. And definitely an option to look forward to. But I think that we just wanted to be able to come and
Oh,
give
yeah.
you the information so that you're aware. Again, we're not asking for anything at this time, but I think it's important that
great.
you understand where we're at. And I certainly echo a lot of Don's comments around just the complexity of the cases and how we have really moved towards some specialized areas so that we can have a bigger impact for our clients, including mental health agents and drug agents. And
So Don, I don't know if I'm asking something out of school, but you have brought up these murder cases many, many, many times. Have they pleaded not guilty, so that means there's going to be a trial, or have they pled out?
So the Mosier case right now is set for omnibus Monday, this coming Monday.
Yeah.
It's an uncontested omnibus hearing, and as you know, he's been indicted for premeditated murder in the first degree.
Right.
Which is life in prison without the possibility of release. Almost all those go to trial.
Okay.
Because they got nothing to lose.
Yeah.
Munger is, since Mosier's my case, I know the date right off the top of my head. I don't remember when the next court date for Munger is, but that person has not pled at this point either. So both of those cases proceed forward.
I'm actually glad you're here. I got a couple other questions, and just looking here, 388.9, which is county attorney statute, and just reading it, it's kind of ambiguous to me, being a farm boy, but it says,
The simple country lawyer.
yeah, right, okay, yeah, right. My reading of this is that the county board may employ an attorney to assist the county attorney or to advise the county board members. And so just asking, it seems like you're really busy, and how would you feel, or would you have any appetite about talking about like land use ordinances, or land use things, not enforcement? Obviously, I know that's your job, but I think, I can't speak for anybody else, but Doug and I have had a conversation, and we're just concerned about things not getting done in a timely manner, you know, and we just want, I think we're customer orientated, and when the customers are waiting a long time to get something resolved, I just think it just looks bad for the county. And then I think they go and tell their friends that how terrible we are. And you see where I'm going with that? I mean, what do you think of that?
I'm always willing to sit down and have conversations. That particular statute dates back to when my great-grandpa was an attorney.
Okay.
And the county attorney's office consisted of one part-time person, and it allowed the county to hire an additional person to help that solo practitioner. When I first came back to town here to practice law, the county attorney's office was still a part-time office, and Steve Ratke was county attorney, and he was part of the Borden Steinbauer Ratke law firm at the far end. But the county had 3 full-time prosecutors, well, 2 prosecutors, 1 in child protection, but 3 full-time assistant county attorneys, and 1 or 2 support staff, I don't remember because I wasn't part of the office, and they were housed right back there, where when I first became county attorney, it was where most of my office is, in that little closet back there that we should
Yeah.
close the door, that's the
Yeah.
instead of leaving it open. And so really, that's the focus of that statute. It's never been readdressed. I'm not aware of any court cases that deal with that, other than there is Graham v. Klump about when the district court can take a case away from a county attorney by having the attorney general petition the court for significant or severe inaction. And also there are some cases that say the county board can hire their own lawyers in real estate or HR type situations.
Right.
Other than that, all the case law I'm aware of vests that authority in whoever is the elected county attorney. And actually yesterday, Stephanie Shook and I met with Gary and Jake to discuss various issues about this rollout on trying to create the second half of what we have as a 2-attorney, 2 legal assistant civil team, one being the community services building, one being the land services building, just for ease of reference. And actually, I think a lot of the cases that had backed up into the enforcement of the P&Z stuff, I believe a lot of those have been resolved now. And I have requested that Steph, and we actually talked about that yesterday between Steph and Jake, they're going to try to put together something to come do a presentation to the board. I think probably at a committee of the whole, but we didn't actually specifically say that. And as far as last year, when I took over all the civil forfeiture cases in our office, and I took over all the land use stuff because Rocky just couldn't do all the human services-based stuff and the land-based stuff, my intent was to try to clear all that up last year. I got to 3 of them. So that's on me for not getting done what I told they would do. It's not anybody else. So, though I'd be happy to have that conversation, Commissioner Corian, and we can do that. We're trying to address that and move forward too, but in order for us to even expand more. So for instance, I've talked to a private law firm after you all gave me the ARPA funds for some part-time assistance to try to catch up that COVID backlog. And I talked to this law firm. I offered, just said, you go out and you hire a lawyer, and you go out and you hire a legal assistant or a legal secretary, whatever your terminology is, and I will pay that, I will give you that amount of money for 1 year to cover that expense, but you can't bill me for anything. I'm paying to give you a lawyer, and you're going to take all this over for me. They wouldn't do it. So I'm still trying to figure out what to do with that money you gave me. That's a separate discussion, which we can certainly enter into, than what I really came here today, but it does pigeonhole in that if we are going to try to expand that civil side and the services my office can present to the civil side. Backing up for a second, when I took over as county attorney, we had 3 or 4 external contracts for legal services that Mr. Jack Graham had in place. And over the years, we absorbed those so that we could take that money, and rather than handle X number of cases, we could do X number of cases in that area and get plus Y services because we had someone here that could do more than just focus on that little piece. But now we're maybe coming full circle, Paul, to kind of look at that. So yeah, I'd be happy to sit down and have a chat.
Well, I think we should have a chat about it because that statute is still in effect and it looks kind of broad and kind of ambiguous to me on, it almost seems like we can, and then sometimes it seems like we can't, but I just, all I want to do is, I don't want all this other stuff to backslide and then you say, well, I got a couple murder cases, yeah, and I understand that's extremely important, but there's a lot of other people out there that they don't want their life stopped, because
agree.
we can't get the work done. But,
No argument with me on that.
and we're not, I don't want to get into an argument about your authority. I understand you're elected, but we're all elected too, and we're just trying to, anybody else can speak up, because I don't want to be, I'm not speaking for anybody else except myself. But I think sometime we should have that conversation. What do you think, Tim?
I like having conversations with Don.
Yes.
I think the issue is the aging, and we got to do a better job of putting together, what's the status? What are we talking about here? How big is this issue? Are we talking about one case? Are we talking about 100 cases? We have to have some data. And so we're working on getting that report for you, and I think that would be an appropriate time then take that report and say, well, what does it say? What is it telling us? Is it telling us there's a little issue here or a big issue? And then have the conversation about, well, how do we tackle it?
Sure.
That'd be a great,
I can tell you, I know that at least one of those cases that receives a lot of complaints and inquiry, based upon my knowledge, happens to have been in litigation for 2 years on the civil side. Civil litigation can take a really, really long time. COVID didn't help, but civil litigation can span out for a long period of time as opposed to criminal, which tends to go a little bit faster. So,
Yeah. And then,
I'm not going to mention any names or anything.
no,
but I
I'm
do
not
know.
mentioning any names. And then, I did hear one case, but apparently I didn't hear both sides. I heard the case of some deck that was 6 inches over, and I heard one side of the story.
I'm familiar with that
But I
issue.
did not hear the other side of the story. And once I heard the other side of the story, I was not as sympathetic as I was when I heard the first.
Always good to give both sides of the story.
What are the facts?
Don, do you or whomever have any type of plans on how this
So what?
movement, and I'm not, just to get back, kind of, I
Back
think
to-
what you're here for today is,
So, if I may, Mr. Chairman.
But this was good to have this kind of
it
conversation.
was, and I would love to have. a
Because you and
further-
I are worried about this.
Yes.
You can
But-
ask me anything you want. I might not answer, but you
for
can
the-
ask me anything you want.
Mr. Lawyer, country lawyer.
So
Back
is
to
there
what
a
I
plan?
Back to what I came in for, I just wanted to mention a couple other things. So we're looking at wanting to expand corrections to pretrial supervision as well, which we've never been able to do, but most other counties have. And how can we expand groups? And we've done things creatively like contracting with Diversion Solutions. I won't get into the details, but if any of you want to know about that, I'll let you know afterwards. So we have been meeting and have had some preliminary conversations and started to look at what would some of the possibilities be primarily within this footprints of the buildings we have. Not looking at building new buildings, Chelsea, just for the record. But
We're not building
also,
anything over my dead body.
in doing due diligence, though, I just felt compelled to mention that. And if it's cheaper to build a new building than it is to remodel, which I 99.99% would doubt that would be the story. We're not building new buildings, Chelsea. I just feel my due diligence for what I'm doing, that I have to have some comparison conversations with the SMEs, you know what SMEs are, right? Subject matter experts in that field, because that ain't me. And ultimately, unless I'm told not to do something, which I still might do anyway, but no, I'm just kidding, Commissioner Corney. Unless I'm told, no, this is dead in the water, don't do anything, yeah, I want to continue in the conversations with community corrections, with Tim, probably include the courts, of what some possibilities might be, then to maybe probably come back to a call again and have a further conversation. And so really all my intent today was not to build new buildings, Chelsea, was to just start a conversation. So really, we have nothing to come and present to you next week, we're just starting a conversation.
Mr. Chair, the timing here is probably pretty good. We're right in the middle of the budget process and putting together the CIP plan for subsequent years. There's probably some short-term things we could do. I heard loss of conference rooms, and that can be an issue, especially in the court building where attorneys want to meet with clients and probation agents need to meet with clients as well. There's probably some short-term things we could do. One of the things that I think has been a sore spot for lots of folks, including board members, has been in the Judicial Center. When you walk in there, there's that great big lobby next to the glass, next to the elevators. That is basically wasted space. We probably should take a look at adding some conference room on the second floor and third floor. That would alleviate some of that in the short term. We should look at what that space plan would look like and can build something into the CIP for putting those plans together. I doubt it is something that you would move on in '22. Frankly, the construction costs are pretty high right now, and so I think planning efforts now make sense. I'd love to see what happens in the construction trades over the course of the next year or two.
Is there enough room in the second floor of community services for your entire operation?
There would be. We would need to build some interview rooms. That would be, I think, the biggest challenge, and everything else would be cubicle. But yes,
But
there would be
if
on
we
second floor.
shifted all that, would that free up then space for your needs?
That's what we're looking at. So
Okay.
if that's something that makes economic sense to do or
Yeah.
can be done to meet the needs that we foresee, that's something we'd like to pursue and bring back to the board for consideration. I think there would be enough space down there to be able to address the issues that we currently have. And like I said, when we first moved into those buildings, I didn't think I'd ever have this issue, so.
So, Mr. Chair, if I can ask a question, Don, you referenced the law library, which I have a meeting with those individuals tomorrow at 4 o'clock. In your view, how much is that law library actually used?
I really don't know, Commissioner Barros. When it was on third floor next to us, for a while, we kept the door locked because books were disappearing, so people check the key out. And since it's gone to the second floor, we don't do that anymore.
That problem hasn't gone away, by the way.
Brace yourself. Even I don't use books to research much anymore. I actually go online and use Westlaw and do it electronically. So I know there are people, that use it. There are local attorneys that use it, but we've cut way back from when the law library used to be in this building in the hallway over there, just with the increase in technology and the accessibility to that. But if you want, the law library people probably will know better than I can find out anyway.
I'm going to ask them that question tomorrow, just to see, so that we have a reference about whether it's really worth.
I used to go down there, even when it's second floor, I used to go down there a lot to do research. I don't remember last time I went there to actually look at a book to do research.
I know last year the conversation was that fewer and fewer are actually using the hardcovers to do their work.
Mr. Chair, I was wondering about the potential for a virtual law library too, given the fact that the books are really not in usage. It's not a physical space issue anymore. And so you might want to explore a virtual law library that would allow members of the local bar or however to gain access to that research capacity.
I think that makes a lot more sense because, as you know, the statute gets changed every year. I don't know if you remember, I got the statute, some statute changed on the coroner transport that wasn't in the books.
I do recall that.
And I informed Mr. Hool, so, and
Corrections is, sorry, go ahead. Corrections is using it, but not as a law library. We're using it for meeting space.
Mr. Chair, if you would like, I could check with Westlaw. There's two main providers of online research, Westlaw and Lexis. Most county attorneys are on Westlaw, as are we. But I could check with our provider to see what options for a virtual law library might look like, together with Tim with maybe some potential numbers, not committing to anything, just getting some data, and I'd give it to you, Tim, and then we can see where we go with that. I could probably get that put together in a couple weeks, I think. That'd be cool. Okay.
Good, thank you.
Yeah.
So what would be the go-forward plan with this?
Mr. Chair, if it pleases the board, I think what we will do is try to incorporate some of this planning effort into the CIP for 2022.
Yeah. What effort would we be focused on?
What I'm hearing is that the county attorney's office is outgrowing its space and is going to need to kick corrections out of the building at some point in time. And so it's the planning effort to do that, to rehouse the county attorney's office in space that will meet that need and to relocate community corrections to existing space in community
Yeah.
services.
Because did I hear we're operating out of 4 locations right now?
Yes, between our supervisors and all of our agents.
And that just seems to, like a nightmare. But, so that would be part of our capital plan, is to research what it would take to, and I'm assuming the second floor, which is,
These are, there's a planning process you got to go through first, design, schematics,
Sure,
get bid
but
stuff.
that's what I guess
And that
I'm
takes time.
suggesting.
So I think it makes sense that we would use 2022 to do that.
yeah.
Just plan it.
So
I think we can do something with conference rooms. That's a pretty small thing, but
So planning and design money. So first of all, I want to know how much that's going to be. And then,
I think it would probably cost us around 200 grand. This is architectural services.
your office is not able to do that?
No, it has to be certified by an architect.
I'd like to see what would that entail? I mean, is it new office spaces or is it just cubicles or?
Well, that's the planning, isn't it? To say, what is it that we need to construct here?
It just seems like I'm like a baby compared to Don. I've only been here 10 years, or it's going to be about 10 years. But it seems like we're remodeling constantly here. Like, oh, I got to remodel here. I mean, it's worse than some rich people or something. I don't know. It just doesn't make much sense to me.
Well, we could start with drawings, right? Of what and then if we like it, then go to the next phase of a more detailed cost.
And I think that's the
Sticking 200,000 in.
I think that's the appropriate plan, is
Yeah.
you come first with design schematics. That is not an architectural rendering. It is a concept plan. And then you look at that, and even just with that, we can get ballpark estimates.
How do you come up with 200,000? Did you just pull that out? of the air?
Architects are not cheap, and you think about that has to be the architectural drawing for the electrical, for the plumbing, for the elevator, for the HVAC, for the walls that are moving, the construction itself. And so construction's not cheap.
Okay. But you're not
We
asking
don't-
for anything today.
We don't have to, we don't have to spend the money for architectural renderings if you do not approve a concept plan.
Right.
But you have to have an architect sign off on construction of any public facility. So we don't have a choice. You have to use an architect. We can do a design-build option. We have done that in the past. We've done some best value procurement. I think we could do that as well. But at the end of the day, you still have to have an architectural set of drawings that is signed off by an architect, just like you can't build a public road without a public engineer.
How's that sound?
We'll work it into the CIP process.
That
You
kinda-
guys will see that again, and then, to the extent that it raises concerns, we can continue the dialogue.
Well, we know this has been an issue for quite some time. It's been no secret to that, so.
But I didn't hear anything today that lead me to think that we need to add footprint. No, I don't think so. I think we have available space.
Say that one more time.
Yeah, please say that one more time.
Y'all see, we're not building new
Yes,
space.
we need additional space.
Thank you.
I'll want that to be the headline.
County needs
A
nothing.
Mormon Eye headline would be better, Paul.
Any other questions for these guys?
I don't think so. I think, we approved for that, build out of that courtroom. What's the status of that?
John can give you an update, and then while John's here, I think maybe an update on last night's storm damage that we suffered here.
Good idea.
Yeah.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. Courtroom 2 build-out design process has begun, and we have a floor plan, and we're working on technology issues, and we will have a model done by the architect by the end of this month, where they've taken a floor plan that we like, that we've selected, and working with the attorney and the courts, and they're modeling that now, so we can see what that will actually look like. And then once that's done, we'll get the design firmed up later this summer, and we'll be ready to go out for bid in the fall.
Oh, okay. So there's no nail bending yet.
That brings up another question. So there's two separate offices. Don, you got your county attorney's office, and then you got, what's it called? It used to be Daryl.
Court administration?
Court administration. They're in a whole separate place, right?
Their whole office is on first floor.
Right.
And then you have so that's court administration. Then on the second and third floors, you have the judges' chambers with a court clerk and the court reporter for all the judges that are chambered in Crow Wing County.
But the court administration, are they busting at the seams or asking for any additional space or?
Court administrator's not mentioned to me anything about asking for additional space, but I can check on that, Commissioner Corrigan, and see.
Because if you're busting at the seams, I don't know if that's the proper term, I would think that they're busting at the seams too then. Wouldn't that?
You know, the courtroom build-out is going to build out an additional courtroom. There were additional judges' chambers that were originally planned that were not occupied. They have subsequently become occupied. We're going to fill out an additional judge's office, if I'm not mistaken, in this plan. Is that
Potentially.
correct?
But we're going to convert a jury deliberation room to have a partition wall that can be removed, so we can have a bigger jury deliberation room instead of two small ones, so we can, it'll be a modular kind of
I
thing.
really view that project as meeting the judiciary's needs for the longer term.
So court administration is the judiciary?
Yeah, I think if you go ask that question, you might be afraid of the answer you get.
So is the judiciary, their court administration, they're state employees? They're not, they're state employees.
Entire judicial branch, which are judges, court reporters, judges, law clerks, and all of court administration are state employees.
And do we get reimbursed for that space?
Statute requires us to supply a courthouse for the judges to use, for the judiciary, to use, which we have done.
The
That
drug
isn't a
court.
partially funded mandate, that is a completely unfunded
Remember that
mandate.
movie Walking Tall?
From the state legislature, right?
I'm not in the state legislature anymore.
That's correct. No, the unfunded mandate.
The drug and DUI court coordinator also did used to be housed in court administration on first floor, but they did have to move her out of there and since moved her across the street over into community services as well. So they have had to move her out, and then our agents are sharing that space with the coordinator in community services.
Why does this court stuff just seem to me to be so complicated? I mean, if one lawyer says, I gotta go get a massage today, then it keeps waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting.
Well, I tell you what, Commissioner Coyne, the first time I hear a lawyer say I need a continuance to get a massage, I'm going to give you a phone call so you'll know what happened, because I've never heard that.
Well, if they've got, oh, I've got something going on, you know, and then it keeps getting delayed and delayed and delayed and delayed.
Continuances are an issue in whether it's criminal or civil litigation. I agree, and I can tell you no one is more frustrated than myself and my staff in many situations where the defense continues to get continuances. And if you talk to, say, the public defender's office or certain defense lawyers, they'll blame it on us. So continuances are just a fact of life, particularly when we have heavy calendars.
Can John give you an update on storm damage?
Yeah.
Please.
The storm was severe, as you know. It didn't hit, I live about 40 miles north here, so it actually missed us this time. We got hit with the Memorial Day one, and we had a tornado within a mile of my place, but so I dodged that bullet. On campus, we lost power about 8 o'clock last night, 8:30. The power came back on, went back off. That happened a couple times. Then it stayed off. The generator system for the campus ran all night long last night until this morning, and we got BPU finally got in here about 6 a.m. The transformer between community services and central services facility in that little alleyway that serves those two buildings is gone. It blew. Associated with that is an underground utility line, one of 3 phases that has a problem that they're working on right now. We should be back online very soon on utility power. and the flagpole snapped off, and we got some controllers around campus that are giving us trouble and some electronic stuff, but we're working through it, and we're stabilizing. I think we'll be back full utility power here in probably the next half an hour, so.
Community Services was probably the worst affected by that. They don't have power, they don't have AC. I don't know that their computers are functioning. And so right now, we're not able to provide services to folks in the Health and Human Services arena, but we expect by, hopefully in a few minutes, that will be back, if not already, might be already. So. we
Land
did-
Services and Historic Courthouse are power back on, it just said, so they're getting close.
Any roof damage because of the flagpole up here?
We're scanning, well, this roof is, we're scanning all the roofs right now, but the roofs that we've got through appear to be fine. This one is fine. I don't know how the flagpole didn't damage that big fascia on the top of the courthouse, but there's just one little tiny chip where it hit, so that must have been a sight if you were driving down Laurel Street to see
So
that.
that's what that is the flagpole?
Flagpole, it snapped
Oh,
off
God.
right at the roof line and tumbled right off the building. Didn't hit the building, didn't break any windows, so we got lucky there.
Wow.
It could have scarred the building all the way down.
Yeah. This could have been a lot worse for us.
John, did you say we lost the generator?
Pardon me?
No, we didn't lose the generator.
Oh, it ran.
It ran,
It
okay.
ran all night long. Yes.
If we had every power connection in Crow Wing County hooked up to the generator, we would never notice.
Right.
There is sufficient capacity in that generator. In our CIP, for the last 10 years, every year, we add more. We add more. We add more.
Add more what?
Capacity
Oh,
that the generator will power in an outage. And so when the generator was first purchased, way back when, one of the cost-cutting measures in there was, we'll hook up the most emergency things. So,
What caused community services to go down then?
Transformer.
Transform, okay, got it.
and thankfully, it's BPU's transformer, so we don't expect an expense associated with that.
No, no. We were lucky to find one. They actually did not have one. They had to go get one from another utility, so.
So it was different for us, a little bit different, and public may still be seeing some impacts today as we work through the power outage, and so we appreciate the public's patience.
will John Bowen be putting out an update countywide?
There may be enough damage. Chelsea asked me that question walking in. There may be enough damage, and it is only from, road damage or power co-ops, not for-profit ones, just the co-ops.
Yep.
And typically what happens is we get damage estimates from each of them. John does reach out and try to get damage estimates from them. If it goes past a certain threshold, then we would need to declare a local emergency. The board chair, recently did one. We only typically need to do that for the 3 days that the board chair has the authority to do on your behalf.
Yeah.
That is so that we can qualify for state reimbursement. If it's a state disaster, I believe we get 75% reimbursement from the state for those public costs. If it is a federally declared, which the threshold is considerably higher, then we're eligible for 100% reimbursement. So it's normal and customary when we have a storm like this that John would reach out to townships and cities and see how much damage there is. And if we cross that threshold, I'll hear from him.
And can I say something on that?
Absolutely.
John Bowen was bragged up a little bit at my last Crow Wing Power meeting because co-ops previously were not eligible, and John has worked really closely with Crow Wing Power. Because I think the first storm, and I might have my numbers mixed up, but the first storm was $150,000 in damage for Crow Wing Power. And then the next one, I can't remember what that number was, but I think it helps for a nonprofit. Otherwise, the rates are going to have to go up because you're going to have to try to find the money to pay for that. But our operations officer up there was bragging up John about how good he does to help out with that. So that's a good thing.
This is when we tend to hear that,
Yeah.
is, when we have some damage, and then we hear about the good work John does.
Can I say something else? I just want to say thank you to both of you guys for coming. I think this is actually helpful,
To the
at
three
least,
of them.
for all three, yeah. But I especially with Don, that we don't run into a problem like we've had in the past. I think it's good that we can kind of talk things through, and I think we're both we're all trying to get to the ultimate goal of trying to serve the citizens here without getting into a big fight with each other.
I appreciate that, I agree, and thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for anybody?
More to come. Thank you all.
Sure, that's what we have on the agenda for you today. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have about anything.
Mr. Chair, if I could, I'd like to see if we could have some discussion in regards to the stipend for planning and Board of Adjustments. After you get your coffee.
Go ahead, I'm listening.
What's your proposal is, I guess, all I really want to know.
Well, really what got me thinking about it again is when the site visits.
You don't have to tell me. I'm concerned that if, any of us lose our appointee on there, I think we're going to be hard pressed to find people that are going to want to serve there. And they're never going to get paid what they should have for their time, because everybody's time is worth something, but at least we can try to compensate them a little bit better. And I think that's what you're looking at, because that's what I'm concerned about, is that that's a thankless job. It
Well,
really is.
and really, your representative, mine, there's only really 3 that are making the site visits on a very continuous basis too.
Yeah.
And really, those are the only ones getting paid for the site visits.
Right.
So those that attend, yes.
Mr. Chair, if I might, here's what I would like us to consider. For these site visits, I would like to pay them $25 an hour with a 3-hour minimum. That would be their $75 that they're currently getting, with a $150 max. And if they're out there and it happens to run through a lunch period, we would deduct a half an hour for that lunch period. So that would put it at 150. And then for the PCBOA, that we raise that from 125 to 150 to match the max that they get for the on-site visits. That's what I would throw out there for us to consider.
So just a question on that for Tim is, we consider it, we call it a per diem. When you go to by the hour, what does that do? I mean, I'm concerned that they're not becoming a county employee. And where per diem, that's why I think a per diem probably would be more in order rather than an hourly thing, because I think we could get into problems there. Right? What do you think, Tim?
More accounting for sure.
I think there's not enough control over their actions that there's a big risk that they would be viewed as employees. So I think you're pretty flexible about what you want to do. If you wanted it to be a flat fee, however, that's fine too.
Steve, I think
I'm okay with that, Paul.
I would feel more comfortable with that way somebody, and Rosemary, I know you'll agree with, if you have to keep track, okay, we left at 8:30 and here's my timesheet. No, just a per diem to me would make sense.
Would you advocate then for 150 for each one?
Definitely.
And I'm comfortable with that if the rest of the board is.
And I would point out the fact that somebody told us, can't remember who, said that they're going out for 8 or 10 hours on a whole day of site visits, aren't they?
Right.
There have been long days on site visits recently, and so, yeah, that has been an issue. So
What I was getting at, Paul, with the kind of the hourly is, we know that has an up and down track
Yeah, but you know what, I
record,
think it evens out though, Steve. Sometime they might be
Right.
way, whole all day, and then might be a half a day the next time.
Right.
And I think it just kind of evens out. So what are you proposing, 150 for the regular meeting and the site visits be the same?
Right.
I'm fine with that. What do you think?
I think that's perfectly fine. It's a thankless job.
It is a
It's-
thankless job.
And you're out on construction sites and,
What, assuming, and I'm good with it for sure, but what if a year from now, things kind of die off? Can we revisit it where, in the past, we've had just a couple agenda items, but I don't know, maybe that'll never happen again, but they truly deserve more money.
Well,
You typically set this in January of every year.
Yeah, okay.
That doesn't mean you have to set it in January of every year, so you can change it whenever you want to, but at least once a year, you will have it in front of you for consideration.
Piece of work.
So if you decide at some point in time in the future, hey, we're only seeing one item on every site visit, you could change it back to 75 if you wanted to at that point.
But for now, how would we, could this be on the agenda for, okay.
You can change it whenever you want to.
but I still say that, I look at, okay, so we had the inspectors. We can't find any inspectors. Some of them were trying to fill employees and can't find employees. And, you know, I just say, God bless these people that are doing this. Like Sue, I'm glad she reached out to me. Otherwise, I don't know who would want to, from the public, that would want to do this job. And I think that this doesn't, they're not like getting rich on this. This is at $5 an hour gas, you know, if they're getting, and I'm assuming we don't give them, do we give them a computer or iPad or anything?
I believe so.
So they're just looking at this stuff on their own personal computer.
I believe so.
Okay.
Their stuff is the same as what yours is. It's through the public portal on Granicus.
But they can log on to it and.
They can log on at home, anywhere they can log on, just like you can to
But
to
they've
do your
got, but
packet.
they have to do it with their personal computer. Yeah.
That I don't know. I
Yeah.
just know that you can get to it just like you can. It's the same software that they use.
Yeah. What do you think, Rosemary?
Doesn't matter. You guys are all for it.
Chair, I'll prepare a resolution for your consideration, and it either passes or it doesn't, and that's up to you guys.
And it would just be changing the one, be it for the resolve there. That's
no,
what
I
you
think-
passed at the beginning of the year.
No, I think we're talking about changing it from 150 for the meeting and 150 for the site visit, right?
Yeah.
Right.
It's
So the 125 and the 75.
right.
125
Yeah,
and
they're both in
75.
there.
Yeah.
Right. You gotta
They're
change
both
it
in there.
up above the
Yeah.
75.
Right here,
You
I'll
gotta
point
change
to it, right
Okay.
here.
the line.
That's the one.
Per
that has-
meeting rate for Planning Commission Board of Adjustment Committee members of $125 per meeting and $75 per site visit. That's what you're discussing right now.
Right.
This is what was approved at the beginning of the year, so it's basically just making an amendment to,
And changing it to 150 and 150 rather than 125 and 75.
and in that resolution, we'll still add the mileage, and, I mean, they're still eligible for their mileage too.
The IRS just recently announced they're increasing the reimbursement rate for mileage, I think from 58.5.
63.
What is it, 62?
63.
63, is it? Okay,
As they should.
yeah.
And
And they're still
Bill,
losing money.
just, can I ask another question
You
on
sure
this?
can.
Okay. This, I'm guessing that nobody came to you from the
No.
commission. This is your idea. Yeah, I know, I see that.
When I see this, yeah.
Because I don't know, nobody's ever complained to me
No,
about it.
no, they haven't, no, and that's why they're doing, I guess to be honest with you, you know, when
Break, I
I,
wanted to say.
Would you be honest with me, please?
yeah, I was thinking, originally when we did this, I thought it would be 125 for both, when we went to 75. So, but I agree with you guys, I mean, they do
No,
good
I-
work for us, no question.
We could be in real trouble.
We could be in real
Oh.
trouble if we couldn't find anybody.
Tim and Therese, do we, under the mileage, reference a hard number, or do we just reference the IRS rate?
The latter.
Okay. So we never have to discuss what that hard number is.
Our policy adapts to the changes in the IRS
Correct.
rate. We don't refer to the specific number, we refer to the IRS reimbursement rate.
I see.
Excellent.
This is, those gas prices are getting to be an increasing problem, and I think even particularly for our volunteer drivers. You know, we reimburse them for loaded miles, and so if they're taking someone to the Twin Cities, they're getting reimbursed for half the trip. And with the price of gas going where it is right now, we may need to revisit that.
Should we just say twice for them, twice the IRS rate?
Well, basically, we would get away from the concept of loaded versus unloaded miles. If we send you to Pittsburgh, you gotta get home from Pittsburgh. Now, we aren't sending anybody to Pittsburgh.
Chelsea, you heard that? Okay.
I'm just saying it's, right now, it's a concept of loaded miles, so if you have to go to the VA in Minneapolis, we're reimbursing them for one way. And with gas prices where they're at, we're having a hard time finding people who are willing to do it for that. So,
Actually, Tim, we're both kind of right at 62.5 cents.
cool.
So do the AIS inspectors get the IRS number for, okay.
And when we have.
So
when we
that,
send
would that be
appraisers
an
out in the
increase to them
field-
too?
Yep, when we send appraisers out in the field,
Okay.
we send social workers out in the field, we send.
If they're using their own vehicle.
Correct. If they're using a county vehicle, then it's in the pool. And you remember when it makes sense for us to have a pool vehicle versus sending a county vehicle, as the price of gas has gone up, the mileage for a pool vehicle goes down. In other words, it makes sense for us to buy a pool vehicle.
Would it make
Lower
sense,
mileage.
would it make sense to have a van to haul these?
We're going to have a conversation about that very thing, I think. We have a need, think about the veterans that we send to medical appointments, you think about the planning commission members. We have some older folks who we transport. And so transporting older folks, we're climbing over the back seat of a van isn't a great idea. Even at my age, I'm starting to notice. And so we probably need one vehicle that can be shared and used by a lot, where getting in and out of it is something easier for those who are elderly or medically compromised in some way. So we're going to look at that as part of this 2022 CIP.
Or if we're having a site visit and we've got 5 vehicles in tow.
One van is cheaper.
Right.
Yep. So I think we had a conversation about that yesterday at SMT, so I believe that will get built into the CIP for '22. But look for it, and
Perfect.
So you're
Anything else?
looking at like a short bus, is that what you're talking about, Tim?
I don't know what they're gonna come up with yet, whether it'll be a van that has the higher, so you can walk in it, or a short bus.
Because wasn't the VSO's office getting rid of their
They are always turning over a van.
bus?
So we get donations from veterans organizations. They're mostly donated. And so when the mileage gets up on one of those, we treat it like a fleet vehicle. And as they're making donations, we put the money into the bank. And then when we have to replace the van, we draw from those funds.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, what else?
I have nothing else for you, but I'm happy to continue to answer whatever questions you have.
Paul, I'll be over at your favorite business later today in Staples. Just wanted to make you aware of it.
Oh, Lord.
Bring gifts.
Otherwise, that's all we have for you, Mr.
All right.
Good
We'll
meeting.
Call it, adjourn the meeting.
Yep, thank you.